how did you get started with basketball? Where'd that love of basketball come from?
Well, I started when I was like 4 years old, but my dad, he was big just on like finding the thing that I would be passionate about and then just going full send into it. So,
Hmm.
like, until I was 10, I did pretty much everything. Like, I played basketball, I danced, I did theater, I did piano, violin, art, soccer, tennis, you name it, I'd probably have done it.
Wow.
And then when I turned 10, he was like, so which one, what do you want to do? Of all the things I've introduced you to, and basketball just always stuck with me.
Hmm.
So then we just went full send into it, training, just like preparing me and then making sure that my grades were good, because, you want to be able to go anywhere. You don't want
Yeah.
someone to be like, oh, you're a great basketball player, but you have a 1.8. So
Tennessee
like,
it is.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So that was pretty much like my upbringing. And it wasn't until probably college that I started to branch out and kind of discover other things besides basketball.
Okay, got you. We were talking a little bit before this
Mhm,
about how like I see a lot of my upbringing in the way you speak
mhm,
about your life and your
mhm,
experiences. Like I was also in a you're going to band. I
mhm,
played saxophone, piano. Like well, my dad
mhm,
was a pastor, and so we were
mhm.
great in instruments. All
Yeah.
these niche, areas. Like we're gonna read
Mhm,
these type of books and what have you,
mhm,
to where you kind of get a well-rounded. And I think that's why I kind of pegged you as like this. She seems so objective. I don't
mhm,
think it's just because of you're just maybe it is. Maybe you're just such a unique mind. But
mhm.
also, I think your parents have a lot to do with it,
Oh, for
and I think
sure.
my parents have a lot to do with it
Mhm,
as far as just raising you in so many diverse environments.
mhm.
Where playing violin, you're gonna meet a different type of person who's sitting next to you in a violin class
Exactly.
or a violin,
Exactly.
goings on. Can
Mhm.
you speak to that at all as far as different environments that you've been in and experienced different type of people?
I was born in Atlanta and then we moved to San Francisco when I was like 3-ish.
Mm,
And they put me like in private school. I went to actually a Jewish school first because it was really close to my house. So I
wow.
was the only black person in that building pretty much for like 5 years.
Yeah.
But it was so normal. Like nobody, because we're all kids, so nobody's gonna like be prejudiced towards you yet.
Right.
So
Right.
it was like that was probably like my best experience just with people in general. Like I never felt out like an outcast, even though I was like, I'm Christian and black and
Mm.
I'm at a Jewish school. You know what I'm saying? So then fifth grade, I transferred to a Catholic school in Menlo Park, California. And so Menlo
Mm.
Park, Atherton, that those are probably one of the wealthiest like zip codes in
Yeah.
America. That's where it's nearby Google,
Yeah.
Instagram, and some of the parents of the kids I went to school with. I mean, they were billionaire, millionaire, making seven, eight
Yeah.
figures a year. And my parents, my dad's a chef and my mom's a nurse, so completely different. And I was very much an outcast, and it was obvious that I was the outcast, you know.
Hmm.
And so that experience kind of showed me what it was like to be around people that are insanely wealthy.
Right.
And I didn't like it, but my parents kind of knew that they knew I didn't like it, but they were like, this is good for you. You
Yeah.
need this
Yeah.
exposure. And
That's
then for
facts.
high school, I moved back to Georgia because, it's a much better state in terms of like where private trainers are for basketball.
Hmm.
It's a lot more competitive. In
Yeah.
California, it's just literally a bunch of white girls, and that's not going to prepare me for
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
So the culture shock was actually being around black people and actually seeing successful black people.
Wow.
The entertainment industry doesn't paint us in the best light, in my
Hmm.
opinion. It doesn't paint us in an objective light. Like we only see the rappers, basketball players, and musicians. And I felt like this was the first time I lived in a neighborhood where there's black people living in nice homes, driving nice
Yeah.
cars, just being
Yeah.
regular.
Facts.
And I think that also it makes it feel attainable. Whereas the parents I went to or the kids I went to school with, like that didn't seem attainable for me because I'm like, look at where I'm coming from. Like, how do I get from where I am to where they are?
Hmm.
But then being around black people who are also successful, I'm like, oh, this is very much attainable for me. And
Yeah.
it's not something that's so far away. There's people who look like me who are doing really, really well. And so I think that like that's one of the reasons why I think I'll probably end up staying in Atlanta with all the problems
Yeah.
here. I'll probably stay because I'm like, this is the circle that I feel like I fit in here, you know?
Hmm. When I think about Atlanta, first of all, there's so many
Mhm,
directions I can go in with
mhm.
what you just said. I've always had an issue with like Tyler Perry's movies because he has a lot of those type of archetypes of like the
Yeah.
mom's an architect, the dad's a astronaut or something, and I'm like,
Mhm.
I can't seem to relate. That's a culture shock for me
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
when I go to the hood, I'm trying to get a haircut, I'm trying to get some
Mhm.
soul food, I'm trying
Mhm.
to hoop a little bit, then I'm
Mhm.
going to church on Sunday.
Mhm.
That's what I grew up seeing is just
Mhm.
church. It's just
Mhm.
my people. I've
Yeah.
never seen a high end like even when I went to Atlanta, like I
Mhm.
stayed right in the middle of the city. I'm like I'm not
Mhm.
even when I went to LA, I went to
Mhm.
Beverly Hills. Like I'm
Mhm.
comfortable around white people to keep it a
Yeah.
buck. I'm more
Yeah.
comfortable around them than
Mhm.
on my own people. So when I go to the hood, it's just a hoop. Like it's for like
Mhm.
one to three reasons. And
Mhm.
so I can definitely relate to the culture shock of coming back around my own people
Mhm.
and like just seeing how I missed it. Like
Mhm.
especially being in the Air Force and
Mhm.
being all over the country. And you go from DC. My first base was the Pentagon and Andrews Air Force Base in DC,
Mhm.
and then I go from there to the middle of nowhere in Alaska, a small
Mhm.
little Space Force base that nobody
Mhm.
knows about. Even people in the military don't know about it.
Oh, wow.
And you're surrounded by trees. And
Mhm.
I'm like, all right, this is culture shock now because I've
Yeah.
been in DC for 4 years.
Mhm.
I go from there to New Mexico, and I'm like, who lives in New Mexico, bro?
Mhm.
Like, why are y'all out here, bro? Go to somebody's coast. And like, so I'm here now, and then going to
Mhm.
Florida and being around the rich yuppies, and they're like, bro,
Mhm.
there's more yachts than cars, bro. Why do y'all have so many yachts, bro? It's just
I mean, they are on the
nonstop
ocean. They are on the
facts.
ocean.
Yeah,
I don't
well,
blame them.
when you think about, there should be more Toyotas than stream no center consoles. Just they're everywhere. I'm like, bro,
That is
y'all live different down
hilarious.
here. Even
Mhm.
during COVID, I went to Key West, and you
Mhm.
just see how they're living normally. Like
Mhm.
it's like Florida didn't even realize there was that this coronavirus or anything. Like everybody was
Mhm.
just going about their business. I'm like, yeah, I'm
Mhm.
gonna hop on my boat, go to this island over here, where I have my peace, and it's just it's different. So I can
Mhm.
definitely relate to a lot of those points you made.